Hello, and welcome to this fourth episode of Season 4 of Raising the Roof. I'm your host, Nick Atkin, and you're tuned into the podcast that brings business leaders and industry experts together to unpick the hot topics both in housing but also much wider. Today, we're taking a close look at one of my favourite subjects, the shifting role of workspaces and, in particular, workplace design, and how this has led to what is pretty much a revolution in how many of us collaborate and communicate at work. We're going to be diving into the crucial role of workplaces in shaping employee well-being, as well as productivity. Being a Yorkshire organisation, we love people to be productive, but also lots more besides. And as companies and organisations rethink where and how we work, we're asking the big question: is the traditional desk and office dead? To guide us through this conversation, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by David Smalley. He's the director at Material Source, and they're based on the wrong side of the Pennines in Manchester. But despite this, we've taken down the barbed wire and invited him across to talk about how they bring together architects, designers, and property professionals to celebrate the importance of material in new designs. So, David, welcome to Raising the Roof.
Thanks very much, Nick. I'm delighted that you've joined me. Chuffed. I'm not sure I'm an industry expert, but I'll do my best.
You're very, very much an industry expert, David, from what I know of you. And that's because you have absolutely bags of experience in the publishing and also the communication industry. But I also know, and it makes me slightly nervous when I have people like yourself on the pod, because you're a podcast pro. You've hosted your own series that's focused on the built environment. But today, you're very much here to share your insights on some of the latest trends that I mentioned before, particularly around workspace design. But also, we were talking before about the impact of technology and sustainability. So, not sure where this is going to go, but we're going to go all over, which is going to be great. So, if you're listening, whether you're an employee, a manager, or just curious about the future of work, this episode will be absolutely jam-packed with valuable insights, which you won't want to miss. So, let's get started. David, can you kick us off, really, with just a quick summary for those people who don't know Material Source? Yeah. You know, what do you do?
Yeah, so I think if you think about the coolest exhibition that you've ever been to and the most incredible co-working space, a bit like the place that we're in today, by the way, that's pretty much what we do at Material Source Studio. And then on top of that, we have amazing exhibitions, biomaterials, bioproducts, seminars, roundtables, and events pretty much every week. So the idea, and you're right, we started in Manchester some 4 years ago. So the idea was created by Darren Clanford and Michael Rogan. I joined them a year before we opened 4 years ago.
Right.
And I guess essentially our job is to build communities. So one of the communities at Material Source Studio are our partners, suppliers.
Yep.
And they basically are there to showcase their technical skills and their world-class products. And then the other community are the architects, designers, and property professionals who are interested in either specifying or influencing the use of those products.
Right.
But beyond that, so it's not a showroom, okay?
Yeah.
So it's not you go in and somebody says, can I help you today? Our members, our architects, designers, and property professionals go in because it's their place. And this is the first thing I said to Darren and Michael some 4 years ago. If we get them to believe it's their place, we've won. So you'll get somebody coming in and they'll come and work and catch up on their own. They'll come to one of our events. They'll bring a client in. So it's a magical place and curated beautifully. So that's what we do. We started in Manchester 4 years ago. This beautiful Victorian warehouse. We opened in Glasgow 18 months ago, a stone's throw away from Glasgow Central, and excitingly, we are going to be in London come August this year, right in the heart of Clerkenwell. I want to say before we start, I am not a designer, I'm not an architect, but I've had the privilege over years sitting with people like you on seminars and incredible minds, world-class minds. So my knowledge comes from those conversations. And actually, much of what I will cover today, I will actually be referring back to our brilliant other side of our business, which is Material Source Online, is their website, packed full of fantastic content. So beyond our physical space in Manchester, Glasgow, soon to be London.
Right, but you started to paint a bit of a picture of your studio in Manchester, and I've had the absolute pleasure of visiting there quite a few times now, and I'm always blown away. It's a very organic space. It's always different when you go again.
Yeah.
There's some, it's changed. Perhaps just give our listeners a sense of what it's like when you walk in and when you walk around, what it looks like, and as importantly, what it feels like as well, because I think that's what really hits me about it.
It's a really good point, and the word you use is feel, all right? And we use the word experience.
Yeah.
So just like your place, okay, you don't want your people to think this is my workplace. In fact, you don't even call it that.
No,
do
we
you?
don't.
What do you call it?
A workspace.
Workspace.
Yeah.
And you are creating an experience, and with your great designers, you're creating experiences. So it's all about the experience. So like a great hospitality experience, a great hotel, all of these things, that's what's crucial to us. The smell, the sound, the welcome, the look, all of these things. Every single person and the thousands that have come through Material Source Studio, I don't think anybody hasn't gone, wow. And that's largely that, obviously, Michael and Darren, but Darren in particular is the creative director, and this obsession with the detail. And that's what it's about. It's creating, people don't use world-class enough, okay? Yeah. Just because we're in England, we're in Manchester, we're in Leeds, use world-class. Yeah. Because it's world-class. Your organisation's world-class. What we create is world-class. So, the look, the feel, the experience. So if the experience is right, then our members, architects and designers and property people will come in and they'll use it and feel comfortable. So the secret is, the mind doesn't like uncertainty, right? Yeah. And so they come in and they feel as though they know what's going on, what they can do. They feel comfortable. We give them the choice to that. So that's really, really important. And it's the same. We'll talk about this, I think, quite a lot. This idea that the brain doesn't like uncertainty, so make it easy for them, and that's what we do, and we do it in bucket loads, I think. And our numbers are phenomenal. We started with something like 20 odd design practices when we started, which is still good, by the way,
that's
per
a
month.
Big number.
Over 90 design practices come through our doors every month. I think in the last month it was 120. So it makes us the busiest place in the UK. That will only be topped when we open London. Right. So it's phenomenal. So we're doing something right over those 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting in terms of the driver for the London opening has come from the designers
market.
And the marketplace.
The market,
sort of saying there's a gap in the market for what you're producing elsewhere. So, you're absolutely right. I do want to delve into that sort of resistance to change. Because as humans, we are hardwired to, or most of us are hardwired to resist that. But I think what, for me, your workplace has done is it opens your eyes. It shows you the art of the possible. It makes you think a little bit differently about some of your own plans. And certainly I know from visiting your studio several times now, I always come away with some thoughts about other things that we need to do. So it inspires that change.
Well, just on that point, if I may, is the world of architecture and design, it's never been more difficult, okay? So the architects and designers have never had it more exciting, but more difficult. There's so many things for them to think about. They can't be experts on everything. So if we're just helping them with a bit of inspiration, that's interesting the way you've done that acoustic paneling or that lighting, and that's a good thing, you see. Yeah. So they can't know everything. Yeah. And so adding that inspiration, either seeing products that they hadn't seen before or displayed in such a way, or how we've created the studio is just another reason for them to come along to the studio.
Oh, that's great. So moving on to change, I think one of the biggest drivers of change, probably in the last, I don't know, maybe 50 years, has without doubt been the COVID pandemic. I think that certainly we've spoken before on this podcast about how that's created a seismic shift in how when, but also where many of us work. And I came across an interesting stat from the Office for National Statistics that about 28%, so just over a quarter of working adults are now hybrid working. That was lower than I thought it would be, interestingly. But we've also seen in the media and in lots of press releases that many people are being mandated to return back to the office, and some big name companies have been leading a return to what I would call traditional or pre-pandemic, or as we call it, BC, before COVID, ways of working. I'm just really interested because you're really well, you get a broad sort of view of this. So what have you seen in this shift in flexible working, and what impact has that had on the evolution from an office to a workspace or a space where people come to collaborate? Are there two tiers of organisations, or is it, what are you seeing, David, right now?
So COVID was interesting for me, which I won't go into now, but one of the highlights of COVID, the period of COVID for me, was working with an organisation called AWA. And so they're pretty much the longest established workplace consultancy probably in the world, headed by a chap called Andrew Mawson. So I worked with them for pretty much 2 years.
Right.
So they work with, and all of it's hybrid. So they have experts all over the world in pretty much every country, and worked with every big company you can imagine. And so much of my learning comes from this, which I'll touch upon in a second. But let me just answer your question about the headlines that we're hearing. So I think the question when you see the headlines, and by the way, I think the headlines are simply, it's just a small number, right? So you get the headline to say Boots are returning 5 days a week. My question always when I see those headlines is, why is that leader saying that? What is their motivation? And you just have to dig and dig and dig, and it could be that they're about to float on the stock market, that they've just moved into 100,000 square foot, and all of these reasons. So I think the question when you see the headlines is this representative of the market? By no stretch, it's not representative. And then the other one is, what is the motivation for them asking their staff to come back to the office? So I think prior to the pandemic, stats I've got, 56% of people working from the office 4 or 5 days a week. When asked now, 92% would like to work in the office three days or less. And the crucial bit here, I think, is the balance, and that's the secret. There isn't a wrong or a right. It's every organisation different. And of course, we talk about knowledge workers, which only represent a relatively small number of employees in the UK. So you have to give people flexibility for them to work their best work. But at the same time, the corporate objectives have to be adhered to. So it's that balance. And mandating 5 days a week, in my humble opinion, doesn't necessarily deal with both of those.
Yeah.
In the same way, somebody said, I'm not coming in the office, that doesn't pay much respect to the need for the corporate objective. So it's a balance.
Yeah, it is interesting. And that point about balance is absolutely key. I mean, well before COVID, Yorkshire Housing was on a journey and was already a big advocate for flexible working. And we'd already developed our hub, home and roam approach. And basically that treats colleagues like grown-up adults. So it lets them choose the when, the how, and the where of how they do their work. And I suppose the underlying principle that is beneath that is that work is something you do, not somewhere you go. And that has really enabled us to not only recruit really talented people, but also retain really talented people. So, some of our colleagues may occasionally get tempted away to go and work somewhere else. But it is only when they're sat down in the interview and they're looking out of the glass box, soulless office at all these people in banks of desks, and they sort of think, oh, you know what, the world's moved on from that. That's not what I want anymore. You mentioned before about balance. So what's your preference? How do you manage that material source? You personally, what
Well, I'll
do you
talk
do?
about me personally, and you made the point about it's the work you do. So I split my time between home, Glasgow, Manchester, and soon to be London. And so on the train from Manchester today, I was doing work. It's irrelevant where I am, is what I need to do. If I've got to meet up with a team in Manchester, I'll be in Manchester. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
It's where I'm going to be effective. My brain doesn't work very. This is something I've learned during our neurodiversity and EDI sessions. Is I've realised I've been able to look in the mirror and realise actually this is what my brain doesn't like. And when I used to work for the company before, I worked with there's about 7 other colleagues in the office, and they had Radio 1 on, which I loathe, and there was lots of noise. And what I used to do is take myself to the far end of the office, and my hair's quite long, and I used to put one of my earphones in that they didn't see and focus on my work. And of course, they thought I was antisocial and all the rest of it. And but it's because I know now from the learning is that when there's noise and it's not music or whatever, it's just noise. I just can't concentrate. It makes me anxious.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that. So I now know what works for me. And that, by the way, is at home as well. So I have to take myself away somewhere in the house. There's no noise, there's no dogs and all the rest of it. Now that, of course, leads us to another point is I'm fortunate that the house has sufficient places for me to be able to do that. Not everybody has that, and I get it. But actually, it's a crucial point is how does that individual work the best? And I know we're going to touch upon this in terms of inclusivity. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge in a workplace, definitely, and the most exciting subject, I think, in the world of workplace. But I do want to touch. I touched upon AWA, Advanced Workplace Associates, earlier on. So they've done lots and lots of research, as you can imagine, over the years, and there was sort of 6 key areas that they focused on for an effective knowledge working community, and 3 that I adhered to pretty closely, I think are hugely powerful, are social cohesion, trust, and information sharing.
Right,
so in the workplace, trust should be top, shouldn't it, right?
Yeah.
Do you trust your people to be working on their own or wherever it is, right? If you don't have that, by the way, they trust you, you trust them. Information sharing, obvious, and then social cohesion. Now, interesting, these 3 things of the 6 do require people to be with other colleagues.
Yeah.
So, but understanding those 3 and how vital they are is crucial, and then how they're enhanced in your workplace environment. So, urge you to look at AWA. This is not an advert for them, but they're just superstars. So it's the world has changed. In answer to your question, I think it's for me. I'm in a fortunate position. I can do what is relevant for me, and I will work where I work best.
Yeah. And that's what this is about for me. This is about how do you get the best out of your people. We employ 955 folk. And they are all different. And indeed, earlier on in this season, we had Catherine Astor on, and she was basically giving some fantastic sort of advice and tips and tricks on neurodiversity, and particularly neurodiversity in the workplace, and how organisations can, as you've perfectly highlighted there, provide space for different people to work at their best and to work at their optimum. So. One of the things, and one of the reasons I wanted to get you onto the podcast was I was really, really keen to really start to delve into how workplaces are designed and built, and you see loads of things that are new coming to the market. But give our listeners a bit of a sense of some of the most exciting innovations in workspace design you're seeing today, and based on what we've just been talking about, how they're going to impact upon the way that we work and interact going forward.
So I think this is about This is about, actually, it's not even just workplace interested enough. It's about hospitality. It's about housing, actually. It's evolving. It's evolving faster than it's ever evolved. So we can go back to, and my history is okay on this, but, early workplace was the Victorian coffee houses. Yeah. That's when work was done. And then we moved on to rows of desks of typists. And then everybody's seen them in the early American films, the battery farm cubicles.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And you know what? Sort of probably about 10 years ago, I went to an exhibition in Cologne called Architects. It's a big furniture exhibition, huge. So this was 10 years ago. And the subject coming back from that was the term third space. Have you ever heard that?
No. Tell us more about
that. It was the subject. So it doesn't matter what first and second space is, but it's either the desk or an office. Right. So you have a desk, you have an office. That was typically a workplace. And the third space were the comfy chairs.
Ah, right.
So that's what they were talking about, the third space. That was only 10 years ago. And even that term has been forgotten already. So I think everything has accelerated since COVID. I think, and I'm going to drop somebody else's name in as well in terms of workplace, is there's a chap I met, again, along probably similar sort of time, a chap called Philip Parr, and he's from Gensler. He was in London and now in Paris. And I remember him showing us some of the schemes he was working on and actually then how he helped design St Catherine's Dock. So Gensler, one of the most high-profile architecture design firms in the world. And it was all about flexibility. Okay, so even then, that's 10 years ago, and it doesn't matter who the client was. And I was shocked of how little there was. And things were on wheels and things. And if you get a chance to go to Gensler's office in St Catherine's Dock, it's about flexibility. It's about a curtain, things on wheels. Yeah. Flexibility. Why wouldn't you? Because that office, and that's interesting enough, how we view Material Source Studio. We had that in Manchester. We iterated that in Glasgow, and now in London. My goodness, the flexibility we built into that. So without question, flexibility is a key part of the future of workplace. So every single designer is thinking about flexibility. And I'm gonna mention somebody else actually, if I may. So we did a brilliant seminar in Glasgow actually with two fantastic panelists, Gillian Burgess-Smith and Jessica Knowles-Smith, not connected, on quality, diversity, inclusion. And I just want to read what one of them said. So merely being compliant about standards which aren't inclusive, or am I going to do that? Or am I really respecting and supporting the rights of somebody to have choice, independence, and dignity when I'm accessing? So it's fabulous, isn't it? This idea. So I think I'm answering your question. It is about the future workplace is about flexibility, but now certainly pre-COVID, but certainly post-COVID, the role of the interior designer is absolutely central because they're not thinking about the shell. Yep. Absolutely super interesting and important. They're thinking about the people. So it's about the people. And therefore, the role, in my view, of the interior designer has gone through the roof. Yeah. And that's why it's very exciting. Pressure's on them because they've got lots to think about. But this idea, choice, independence, and dignity, what even talked about even 3 or 4 years ago in our world. So I think I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. It does perfectly.
And if it doesn't, I hope it's interesting.
No, it absolutely nailed it, and I think it is really interesting what you say about designers because we've used Jenny Hill for our workspaces, and she
who comes across from our place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we let her across the border, but she again, it's just fantastic in terms of that whole thing about. How people use a space and the flow as well, but also different areas for different purposes and also different needs of people as well. Yeah. It's great. It's great how that's built in. there's some people listening to this podcast now who are looking to make changes to their workspaces, and they're about to think, what do I do? Do I go for something? How do I future-proof it? Dreadful phrase, but how do I future-proof it? So in other words, to help them, what do you think workspaces will look and feel like, bearing in mind what we spoke about before about the importance of feel, in 5 years' time?
Oh, I think it's what we touched upon before, is allowing their work colleagues to, if they're in the workspace, to do their best work. So I think it was pre-COVID. There was a rush to do exposed ceilings and wooden floors and all the rest of it. And you're laughing because you know exactly where I'm going with this. There's noise.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very, very simple. It's creating an environment for that individual to do their best work. So technology will be part of that, and materials as well. And materials have improved dramatically. I think it's as simple as that. That is the future, that somebody will go in and they'll want to work there, and they'll want to they'll be able to do their best work. But this point about inclusivity is quite interesting. Is even the wayfinding around a workplace, I think we're going to see more focus put on that. And what I mean by that is, is that door a pull, so it should have a handle?
Yeah.
Is it a push? It should have a plate. When I come out of the toilet, I'm new to the office and it's the far end, do I know which way to come out? The colours, for example. So we're going to see more of that, more focus on, is that bright red floor going to cause somebody anxiety? Yeah. So I think definitely, in my view, there will be greater focus on the inclusive design. I think it's probably one of our most popular sessions that we've done. So yes, physically, a designer in 5 years' time will be creating lots of flexibility, and the products on the market are absolutely fantastic. Great. So that's ticked. And then it's just how it's put together and how that journey and that experience, and that's down to the designers and specialist inclusive designers as well. So I think the future definitely, we'll talk in 2 years' time, and it'll be absolutely normal for us to be thinking this is an inclusive environment.
Yeah.
That's my view.
Yeah. And I absolutely recognise that. And certainly Yorkshire Housing's new hub at the place, it's been designed from the ground up. And it's, the starting point has been health and well-being.
Yeah.
So it's natural, it's welcoming, there's no reception desks, there's no hard lines or open plan spaces. We used to have wooden floors and exposed ceilings, but we've worked with our colleague group, their My Ability, and they've given us loads and loads of really, really quite simple but pointers in terms of the design. They've been integral to the design of that workspace, but also having had guests on this podcast like Catherine Astor, really helped us just do some checks and balances against some of the things that perhaps we'd assumed rather than tested. So, and also part of this is about creating different spaces. So we've got a mixture of relaxed and formal areas. Yeah. We've got lounges, and so basically colleagues can choose. Yeah. As Yorkshire Housing, we've been really successful because of our sort of flexible working approach at attracting people who would not normally have considered a career with us, and that's because certainly the recruitment consultants we work with tell us that job seekers at the moment put equal weight on flexibility of the work offer alongside salary. Yeah. Which, is amazing when you think about it.
Yeah. Didn't exist before, by the way. Yeah. Pre-COVID didn't exist.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to finish for your pottery class at 4:00, you'd have to jump through a hoop, right? How nonsense is that? Here's another thought, right, with these leaders that say, come back to the office. So during this period of time, the partner has been able to take their daughter to school. Yeah. Right? Take their daughter to school 2 days a week, come back home, do the work, and away you go. So their life has changed. So if you think about the well-being of that individual, they're motivated.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to do it because they think, why should I want to work anywhere else, which would give me this balance? We work in a hugely stressful world. And my fear, by the way, is that we're set for an almighty tsunami of burnout if we're not careful. So the opportunity to offset that with being flexibility is huge. So when you hear that headline from that person saying, come back to the office 5 days a week, I just wonder if they've thought about the well-being of their people that has been improved since COVID.
Yeah, I doubt that's the primary factor in their head.
Yeah.
In terms of from what you've seen, because you work with an absolute sort of bag full of designers and consultants. Just trying to boil it down. What are the top practical tips you'd give for creating work environments that are truly inclusive and are truly people centered? What would be your key takeaways for people listening?
The simple answer is the designers must speak to the stakeholders before they even begin.
Yeah.
And there is no one work environment is the same as another. And the stakeholders are interesting. So very often you will, I'm sure this didn't happen at your place, but often you'll hear this, the stakeholders being interviewed, and it's the boss and the heads of the team. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about the man or woman that works in the canteen, if you have a canteen? What about how challenging it is for the cleaner to access the cupboard with all the stuff in, and so on and so forth? So spend a lot of time finding out what everybody needs, okay? And then, of course, match with the primary objective of the company. And then there's another thing, and this sort of leaps on afterwards, and this is a little bit of a bugbear for many designers as well. This idea is when they move into their new workplace is tested afterwards. So the post-occupancy, the data-driven design is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And many designers want to do a post-occupancy survey to see how it's gone and how things have improved because it's a moving feast. But the issue is that the clients often won't pay for that. And my point is do it for free.
Yeah.
Do it for free.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that will change. But back to your point, I think data-driven design is absolutely vital. So to test the views on all the staff and the leaders and all the rest of it to find out what their objectives are.
And what would you say to those people who'd probably say, well, it's a bit like Henry Ford saying if I asked people what they wanted, they'd have told me a faster horse. If I ask people what they want in a traditional office workplace at the moment, they'd probably say a bigger desk.
Yeah, but that's up to. It's a great question, and I think the answer to that's up to the skill of the designers.
Right.
So you say, well, I want a bigger desk, and I'd say, why? And I remember interviewing you when you were at a former company, and you got a big laugh from this about the drawers.
Yeah, pedestals.
Pedestals, right?
Hardest thing you can ever take away from anybody.
And I still remember you saying, and it got a big laugh, and said, it's packet soup and all the stuff that you'll never use.
Yeah.
So the question, that's the skill, and it's actually a great skill, which actually they have anyway, the designers, is to force the question and ask the question, and then eventually get consensus. You cannot design for everybody. That's the truth.
Right.
But you've got to, I think you've got to push back, and as I say, it's the skill of that mediator almost. And at one side you've got the company objectives, and then the other side you've got the health and well-being of the staff, and that's got to come together through fantastic mediation to get to that end result. That's my view.
Right. Okay. I know one of our shared passions is sustainability,
Yeah.
and certainly for for myself, it's been a top priority. That's why we moved to our zero carbon workspace, which is the first of its kind in Yorkshire, possibly even the country at the time. Really interested though, again, because this is another fast moving environment. How are you seeing organisations make their workspaces more sustainable? And again, advice to people listening, what could they do? What practical steps can they do to make their own workspaces more sustainable?
The simple answer is efficient use of resources. Okay,
Right.
but I mean, we're talking two distinct things here. There's one is when the building's gone up, and the organisation may not have any impact on that.
Yep.
And then the operational side of things. And I think no designer wants to design something bad, but most of the designers are acutely aware of the climate crisis, generally liberal thinking, and want to do the best.
Right.
And do you know what they want to do when it comes to the fit out of a particular workspace is they want to use products that last.
Yep.
Guess what? Last. If you buy a good pair of shoes, they're going to last longer. Buy a great handle of the door, it's going to last longer, but it's going to cost more money.
Yep.
So they want to specify things that will last. They want to know that product hasn't travelled too far. And actually that there's some recycled element in it.
Yeah.
So whether it's made from something recycled, can be recycled, but recycle is the heart.
I just want to briefly touch on technology.
Yeah.
You will have heard me rant before about how technology hasn't kept, particularly workspace technology, and I particularly mean things like AV type equipment, hasn't kept pace with the hybrid working environment. Until very recently, it's still been pretty much the same kit that was being sold pre-pandemic, and it clearly has not worked. But we know that's changing now. So what tech trends are you seeing that you believe will become standard in the near future?
Well, first of all, this is a vast subject. And I think
I'll nail it down then. Give us three. Give us three.
Well, I will do that. But before, I think what's interesting is, and you alluded to it there, is that when everybody is in the same place, technology should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. So the issue, of course, post-pandemic is some people are there, other people are, and creating that environment for people to have an efficient hybrid experience. So all I can say, clever people, much cleverer people than me, will create a scenario where it is seamless to have a hybrid meeting. In other words, a couple of people outside the office, a couple of people in. We're getting better. But I think one of the subjects I want to touch upon is AI. And partly because we've got a couple of sessions coming up at Material Source Studio in Glasgow and in Manchester. Yeah, so I had a sort of pre-meeting with a couple of the panelists. And the first thing that one of them said was, artificial intelligence isn't intelligent. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, and I'll come on to something else in a second, but the subject we were talking about is how much of a job will artificial intelligence do for designers? In other words, we can just create a new a design without using all the experience. And his point was that it isn't Google. So a complete novice can't put in, create me a design. The quality of the question and the quality of the person inputting the question has to already be high in order to get the right answer. And the other thing that one of the panelists preluding what we're going to talk about was the idea that where AI will really benefit in the world of workplace is operational. So using AI to operationally make things more efficient. So allowing people to be more creative. So this is where a clever question is asked. Your heating system works better because AI is running it, allowing them to do other things. So that's the sense that I'm getting. And in fact, David Edmondson Bird, he's one of our panelists, and he said AI won't replace people, but people with AI will replace those without.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty neat. So AI without question. Okay. CGI, use of AI CGI designers will be using. I had a conversation with somebody who their developer, big developer, said to them, right, I want to talk about such and such, but don't even think about giving me an AI created design because I'll be able to tell. And this is another interesting subject that we'll start to see. Some people are a little bit afraid to say they've used AI. And so it's hugely interesting subject, as big, if not bigger than the subject of equality, diversity, inclusion. Tech. So those are some of the tech things that we're likely to see.
Yeah, and they very much resonate with. We had Dr. Guy Marshall on, who's got a doctorate in AI and the brain the size of a planet. But he was on the podcast, and a lot of the things you were saying there absolutely resonate with what he was saying about what's coming down the line.
Yeah. Can I just talk? I'm just talking about. I mentioned equality, diversity, and inclusion. So this idea of and perhaps answering an earlier question was about how to create this environment for everybody. And what was one of the things that was mentioned to me quite recently was the idea of equity, diversity, inclusion. So people talk about EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion. I think more and more people are talking about equity, diversity, inclusion, and then more recently belonging, which I love. And this idea that any individual going into that workplace feels as though they can belong. So many people, I was unaware of this, will mask their anxiety and so helping them to belong in that environment. And I must tell you this, I was thinking about this walking down here. So we did a round table a couple of weeks ago and on this particular subject, and I thought about it as I was walking from the station. So there was a gay man on the round table, and he said, and this particularly on belonging. So he said, when I go into an environment, I want to believe that I'm safe to be me, to be my full self, which is awesome. And when I was walking from the station, there was quite a few rainbow flags.
Yeah.
And it just clicked to me. I obviously I noticed them, but I then saw his point of view.
Yeah.
And I thought he will feel safe to be affectionate to his partner because he felt safe in that environment. And it's the same thing in a workplace, giving people that opportunity to be themselves.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. We've recently signed up to the House Proud Pledge.
Yeah.
For exactly the same reason, because there was some research done by Stonewall that said that over 50% of people who are gay who live in social housing or rented housing hide their sexuality when people come to their home to do repair works or other works. And so the House Proud Pledge is a public statement from organisations like ours and lots of others that are saying, we absolutely value and embrace that whole range of diverse sort of ways of living your life. And so again, it's that whole thing about making people feel safe and there's nowhere more important than you feel safe than in your home, is it? Really?
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant.
David, I want to get to one of them. I'm conscious that the sands of time are running against us, but one of the things I'm always in awe of you for is how well connected you are.
Okay.
You have this amazing ability to know so many people, and you network probably like nobody else I've ever met. It's a bit of a masterclass, actually, if I'm being honest, to watch you work a room and to see. And you make everybody feel special. And again, for many people who are listening to this, they will be reluctant networkers. Yeah. Give them a few tips and tricks in terms of how
we're finally onto a subject successful. That I'm very good at, and that I know my stuff. So I think I started on LinkedIn many years ago, and when it pretty much started in this country, I think, and all the people that are on LinkedIn were lawyers and bankers and accountants, bless them, and you see them with their ties and looking very smart, and you'll see on my LinkedIn it's a dog, and I was just being a little bit frivolous. It's our first dog, Ruby, and I won't change it. And that was me. That was me making the point. And so LinkedIn to me is hugely important. I'm sort of up to 8,000 connections, followers, and I use it pretty much every day. But do you know what? I work very hard at it. So I know that most people see a room full of people and they see uncertainty, right? Which their brain doesn't like. So guess what they do? They go into the corner and talk to their mate, or they go to somebody they already know. And by the way, then they spend half an hour with them. Okay. So I see a room and I speak to somebody, and the joy for me is listen to their stories. Just fantastic. And then afterwards, guess what? I link in with them. Or I put them on my phone. And I remember the names because when I'm putting them on my contacts, I'll often use the photograph from their LinkedIn. So then it just helps connect with the name. So networking is the truth is you can be great at your job, but without that other element of networking, persuasion, all the rest of it, you're just good at your job. Is the truth.
Love it. I have to say I am slightly nervous now because we've come to the segment where we offer our guests the opportunity to flip the mic and ask me some questions. And having been on the hard end of your interviewing skills on several occasions, David, I have to say this does make me slightly nervous. So it's over to you. Opportunity to ask me a couple of questions. Anything you want at all.
So when we met in the reception, so I'm not going to ask you this question. So one of the questions was to say, how happy are you? Which is a great question, isn't it? And you're at your height, I think. And then the other question is, what are you going to do post your next job? But anyway, I won't ask you those questions.
Thank goodness for that.
So both of which you said they're tough all questions.
Yeah.
But actually being happy at your job is crucial,
I love my job. Yeah.
So if you weren't a world-class CEO in the world of housing and money didn't matter, what would you love to do?
Right, okay. I genuinely do have my dream job. Mm-hmm. I work in God's own country. I'm from Yorkshire. I work with some amazingly talented people, some of the most talented people I've ever worked with.
Yeah, but that's not my question.
No, I know. You're much better at this podcast, get lark, than I am. I love driving. I really enjoy driving. Not so much in the UK, but not the M62 necessarily. But I do love driving, and so probably something that would give me the flexibility to do that alongside my absolute love of sunshine and warmer climate. So it wouldn't be in the UK; it'd be somewhere warmer. Probably not a coach driver, but I also love the sea. Yeah. I'm transfixed by the sea. I just find it absolutely mesmerising. So probably if money was no object and I could do anything without the stress, probably driving something nice like a speedboat in somewhere warm and sunny. So I love Australia, so possibly Australia or somewhere classy and beautiful like the Italian Riviera. Yeah, that'd be my...
So like a water taxi driver for a resort?
Yeah, probably.
That's what you just described, I think. Because actually you weren't describing a job, were you? You were describing something you'd like to do in the pastime.
Yeah, but it probably is a bit of a
job. Money's no object, which is what I asked, which is fair enough. Yeah. So just on the drive then, so what would be your dream drive? Forget the job, your dream drive in the sun, and which car? Which route?
Well, I've done the route through the desert from LA to Vegas. Okay. And that was amazing. I've always had a plan to drive across America. Route 66 probably. I know it's a bit cheesy. But my big plan is to do what's called the Big Lap. Right. So that's a year to drive around the outside of Australia.
Yeah, right. Fantastic.
And so my dream would be to do that in a motorhome.
Fantastic.
So that I've got the freedom and flexibility to do what I want.
I've got another question, but I've also got another suggestion for you as well. Cairo to Cape Town. So put that on your list.
Oh, right, okay.
Take about 2 years.
In which vehicle?
Yeah, a good one. That's for sure. Okay, my second question to you is: if you were in charge of the world, what 3 things would you do tomorrow?
I think the first thing is the world just feels like we've regressed. So I think I'd put an immediate, it sounds a bit twee, but I'll probably just put an immediate stop to all wars and conflicts.
Yeah.
And just encourage people to be a lot nicer to each other.
Yeah.
We just seem to have got into this really adversarial mindset. So I think for me, just sort of say, a bit like you say, life's short, so kick the backside out of it and don't kick the backside out of each other.
Yeah, we live in a dreadfully polarised world, don't we?
No. Yeah. I think the second would be, and particularly, like you, I've got kids. I've got 3 kids, and I do think that we've got a bit of a responsibility because we are part of the generation that did quite a lot of damage to this planet. Yeah. And so I think for me, I'd want to accelerate the transition to net zero. I just don't understand why we aren't going big on microgeneration and all those sorts of things. But basically to safeguard our planet for future generations. And
very good.
And then third one, probably most importantly of all, I'd make Yorkshire the capital of the world.
Yeah. So, what you're talking about there is talking about a region mean capital. Do you mean Leeds, or can you not specify?
No, I mean Yorkshire.
No, so it could be Sheffield.
No, it's Yorkshire. You're not getting me down that route. You're not getting me. It would be the whole of Yorkshire because the world's a big place, so it needs a big capital.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
Blimey, you dug me out of that one, David. Oh, thanks for that. It's my turn now. Some quick fire questions. Yeah. So the aim of these is to leave our listeners with a few final thoughts. So, first one, what's the one must-have addition you predict workspaces will have in 2035, so in other words 10 years from now, that they don't have today?
I think it's not about something physical. I think it's about a mental attitude of the leaders. So I think we will have to be in a position for us to survive to have leaders that are so much better than they are now. Because if they're not, they won't have the people they need.
Great one. Final one from me. I know you love to travel. So if you could teleport to work anywhere in the world, where would you go right now, other than Yorkshire, of course?
Too difficult, I have to say. I love travel. Africa is my love as a continent. I think if I could go right now to Botswana, I'd go to Botswana. Right. But another B, I also love Berlin.
Oh, right.
So Berlin. I'm going to say, I was thinking another B, and it's certainly not. I'm not going to mention it because that's rude to people from Birmingham. But I think, Botswana and Berlin. There we go.
Okay, well, sadly, it's time to close the door on this episode of Raising the Roof. A huge thank you to you, David, for sharing your insight alongside numerous top tips. And of course, a big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you love this chat as much as we did, and I'm still smiling and giggling as I'm talking to you, make sure you hit subscribe to ensure that you never miss an episode. We're going to be back here soon with some more thought-provoking conversations, so please do stay tuned. And until next time, thanks for listening.